Good morning. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee will come to order. We are here today to consider several important nominations. Mr. Dean Thompson to be Ambassador to Nepal, Mr. Robert Godek to be the Ambassador to Thailand, Mr. Johannes Abraham to be the Ambassador to the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, Mr. Richard Bwangan to be the Ambassador to Mongolia, and Marie C. Damore to be the Ambassador to the Republics of Fiji, Kiribati, Nauru, the Kingdom of Tonga, and Tuvalu. Senator Van Hollen is here to introduce Mr. Thompson, so I'll now turn it over to him to make his introduction.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Romney. Let me start by congratulating all of the nominees here today, and thank you for your service. I have the special privilege, Mr. Chairman, of introducing President Biden's nominee to serve as our next United States Ambassador to Nepal, Mr. Dean R. Thompson. President Biden selected a nominee with impeccable credentials, sterling character, and a deep knowledge of U.S. diplomacy. And he's also wisely selected a Marylander who holds a master's degree from the University of Maryland and represents the very best of our state. As a career member of the Foreign Service, Dean Thompson has served overseas in Malaysia, Romania, India, Paraguay, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. Here at home, he served in several leadership roles within the State Department, including posts as the Director of the State Department's Executive Secretariat Staff, Deputy Director of the State Department Operations Center, and Director of the Operations Center Crisis Management Staff. He currently serves as the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for South and Central Asian Affairs and stepped up to serve as Acting Assistant Secretary from 2020 to 2021. I believe each of these experiences, which span over 25 years of service to our nation, have provided Mr. Thompson with a deep knowledge of U.S. foreign policy and how to connect effectively with local communities in Nepal, should this committee confirm his nomination. Beyond this extraordinary resume, Dean Thompson is a man of exemplary character. He's regarded within the State Department as someone who not only possesses the strength to lead, but also has the heart to fully invest in the well-being and success of those who work for him. He's composed and kind in equal measure, always committed to getting the job done with efficiency, respect, and decency. He's supported in all these things by his family, and I want to salute his wife, Jane, and his mother, Linda, who are with us in the hearing room today. Thank you very much for being here. And I want to give a shout out to his father, his children, and his new grandson, all of whom are watching online. I grew up in a Foreign Service family. I lived in some of the countries where Dean Thompson has served, and I know the challenges and the opportunities of having a parent represent our nation overseas. I want to commend Dean Thomas, the Thomas family, and the Foreign Service officers and families of Foreign Service officers in this room and all around the world. They're on the front lines of advancing America's priorities abroad, and those of us in the United States Congress must commit ourselves every day to honoring their service and their sacrifice through our work here in the Capitol. Also, growing up in a Foreign Service family taught me how to spot a good diplomat. I know a good one when I see one, and Dean Thompson is truly a diplomat in every sense of the word. He'll be ready to go on day one, and colleagues, I urge this committee to support his nomination. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Van Hollen. Congratulations to all of you. You are all qualified for these positions, and we thank you for being willing to serve at this challenging time. We also especially thank your families, and when you have an opportunity to address the committee, we would welcome your introduction of your family. If confirmed, Mr. Thompson would serve during an important time in U.S.-Nepalese relations. Nepal is one of the few countries in the region to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Earlier this year, the Nepalese parliament approved a $500 million infrastructure grant from the Millennium Challenge Corporation, a decision met with protests from citizens who were concerned about American influence in their country. And just last month, the Nepalese government canceled its participation in the U.S. State Partnership Program. These actions followed a concerted Chinese government disinformation campaign. It is vital that the U.S. ambassador to Nepal be able to navigate this landscape and reassure the people of Nepal that America is their ally. Mr. Thompson's depth of experience in this region makes him well qualified to take on this important post. Robert Godek is a career diplomat who most recently served as Acting Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of African Affairs at the Department of State. He served as U.S. Ambassador to Kenya from 2013 to 2019 and U.S. Ambassador to Tunisia from 2006 to 2009. During his long career, he has also held positions as the Assistant Office Director for Thailand and Burma in the Bureau of East Asian and Pacific Affairs and Director for Southeast Asian Affairs at the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. Thailand is a major non-NATO ally with the largest economy in mainland Southeast Asia. Secretary Blinken was in Bangkok this past week and signed 2 cooperation agreements with his Thai counterpart to deepen ties between our 2 nations, saying, quote, "We are taking the partnership between us fully into the 21st century," end quote. Thailand is also a member of the Indo-Pacific Economic Forum and a key partner in a free and open Indo-Pacific. Mr. Godek's wide breadth of experience, which includes previous work on Thailand and regional trade issues, make him an excellent nominee for this position at this critical time. Johannes Abraham currently serves as Deputy Assistant to the President, Chief of Staff, and Executive Secretary of the National Security Council. He has worked in the executive branch in various capacities, including as a senior advisor to the National Economic Council and the Deputy Assistant to the President for Intergovernmental Affairs and Public Engagement during the Obama administration. In his current position, Mr. Abraham has cultivated valuable experience helping plan and execute the 2021 and 2022 U.S.-ASEAN summits, the President's first trip to Asia, and the Vice President's trip to Vietnam and Singapore. The United States must continue to engage with ASEAN on issues of international significance, including climate change and infrastructure development, and Mr. Abraham is well suited to take on this task. Richard Bwangan is a career member of the Senior Foreign Service class of Minister Counselor. He most recently served as Acting Assistant Secretary in the Bureau of Global Public Affairs at the State Department, and prior to that, he served as Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Bureau of East Asia and Pacific Affairs. Mr. Bwangan also lived in my home state of Hawaii for part of his childhood when his dad was in the Navy, and I understand that his dad is here today. Congratulations. I'm sure you're very proud. Mongolia is a vast nation surrounded by Russia and China and a young democracy. It is more important than ever that the United States continue its friendship with the Mongolian people and find opportunities to collaborate on issues including energy independence and economic development, and Mr. Bwangan is well qualified to do so. Marie D'Amour is a career member of the Senior Foreign Service who has served as Consul General in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam since 2019. She previously served as Director in the Office of Maritime Southeast Asia in the Bureau of East Asia, Asian and Pacific Affairs, as well as in the Office of Policy Coordination and Public Affairs in the Bureau of Consular Affairs. She was also the Deputy Chief of Mission as well as the Chargé d'Affaires at the U.S. Embassy in Wellington, New Zealand. Ms. D'Amour has been nominated to represent our nation in 5 Pacific Island countries, Fiji, Kiribati, Nauru, Tonga, and Tuvalu, that cover thousands of square miles of ocean. These nations are important partners, and the United States must genuinely engage with them on issues that are of concern to the region, from IUU fishing to sea level rise threatening their very existence. I've spoken with ambassadors from many of the countries that Ms. D'Amour will be working with if confirmed, and there are urgent needs in these communities that the United States has unfortunately neglected for too long. I'm encouraged by the commitments Vice President Harris made at the Pacific Island Forum leaders meeting yesterday, including plans to establish U.S. embassies in Kiribati and Tonga, appoint an envoy to the Pacific Island Forums, bring the Peace Corps back to the Pacific, and make progress towards reestablishing a USAID regional mission for the Pacific in Suva. I'm sure you will be directly involved in many of these efforts, and if confirmed, I look forward to speaking with you more about how the United States can expand its engagement in the region. There are few jobs as important as confirming nominees to be U.S. Ambassador. It's my honor to chair this hearing, especially given that all 5 of these nominees, if confirmed, will represent the United States in the Indo-Pacific, a region critical to our foreign policy and national security. These positions require vast skills and experience, and you all have it. I now yield to the ranking member, Senator Romney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your comments, and thank you to each of the nominees for your willingness to, again, take on the mantle of service for our nation in a region of the world which is critical for the citizens there, but also critical for the interest of the United States, given the dynamic of authoritarian promotion by the people, by the Communist Chinese Party, as well as a recognition that this is a critical time in history as it relates to major global issues. I appreciate your willingness to serve our country and to represent our interests. Our friends and allies are important in Asia. One, because we value friendship and we value the relations we have with these nations, but also because of our strategic objectives in the region. And that's only going to become more necessary as China continues down its path of malign behavior. Mr. Chairman, rather than reading through my opening comments, I'd ask that they be included in the record so that we can hear from the nominees and move directly to questions.
Without objection, thank you, Senator Romney. We'll now proceed to testimony, and we'll start with Mr. Godek.
Mr. Chairman, ranking member, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you as President Biden's nominee to be the next U.S. ambassador to the Kingdom of Thailand. I want to thank President Biden and Secretary Blinken for their confidence in me. If confirmed, I look forward to working with Congress to advance U.S. interests in Thailand and the Indo-Pacific region. I'd like to introduce to you my wife, Lori Magnuson, who is here today. Lori has been a source of inspiration, strength, and wisdom through our years together. Lori's constant love, support, and partnership have been extraordinary, and I owe much to her. Next to Lori is Brittany Jones, who is an exceptional caregiver, provides much support to Lori. I'd also like to express my profound thanks to my mother, Nancy Dietrich, for all she has done for me, and she is watching online this morning. Thailand has a rich history, remarkable culture, extraordinary, beautiful, and exceptional people. It's been a partner for the United States since 1833. Together, we have woven a rich tapestry of ties that are government to government, business to business, university to university, and NGO to NGO, and people to people. We've improved security in the region, faced global public health challenges, deepened mutual prosperity, and advanced the fight against human, wildlife, and drug trafficking. Building on our shared values and our just-signed United States-Thailand communique on strategic alliance and partnership, we have opportunities in the days ahead to strengthen further our partnership, to renew it and take it to a new level. The United States and Thailand have a long-standing commitment to mutual security. Our militaries fought side by side in Korea and Vietnam. Today, Thailand is a treaty and major non-NATO ally, and we have many military engagements and training exercises, including Cobra Gold, the largest in Asia. Our alliance helps to ensure security for Thailand, the United States, and the region. If confirmed, I will seek to deepen it. Our economic partnership is another vital part of our tapestry of ties. Our total trade is over $60 billion a year and growing. U.S. businesses are a major investor in Thailand, and Thai companies are increasingly active in the United States. If confirmed, I will work to expand further our commercial ties. Strengthening democracy and promoting respect for human rights and the rule of law are fundamental to U.S. relations with Thailand. We have long supported multi-party democracy, freedom of expression, good governance, and respect for human rights across the world and in Thailand. We recognized that a democratically elected government took office in 2019 after the 2014 coup, but work remains to be done by Thailand. If confirmed, I will vigorously continue our efforts to advance democracy, human rights, the rule of law, and will support civil society, independent media, human rights defenders who play a critical role in this effort. The United States and Thailand also enjoy robust people-to-people ties. Our connections are enriched by the presence in the United States of almost 350,000 Thais and U.S. citizens of Thai heritage, and by more than 100,000 U.S. citizens in Thailand. We're strengthened by the close ties our universities and colleges enjoy, as well as the cultural exchange programs we support in Thailand. If confirmed, I will work to increase opportunities for Thais and Americans to learn together and from each other. Thailand plays a vital role in the region. Today, we work closely with Thailand and ASEAN in other regional mechanisms, including the Mekong-U.S. partnership. As a key ally, we welcome Thailand's decision to join the discussions on the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which will help build an economic partnership for the future. If confirmed, I will engage robustly with Thailand, the host of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum this year, to facilitate the transition into our own 2023 host year. Across the years, we have cooperated with Thailand on regional challenges, including law enforcement, response to natural disasters, humanitarian relief. We welcome Thailand's commitment to address the threat of climate change. This will be a critical area for further collaboration. We appreciate Thailand's willingness to host refugees, and if confirmed, I would seek to ensure refugees and asylum seekers have all the support they need. And I would engage in Thailand to underscore our call to all countries to condemn the military coup in Burma and end the Burmese military's horrific violence, which has led to worsening human rights and humanitarian crises. Finally, our embassy in Bangkok and consulate general in Chiang Mai have exceptional teams that are doing extraordinary work to advance our partnership. Ensuring they are safe and secure and have the resources they need will be a top priority for me if confirmed. Mr. Chairman, ranking members of the committee, if confirmed, I would welcome the opportunity to serve as the next U.S. ambassador to the Kingdom of Thailand and to lead our team of capable and committed public servants to advance the U.S.-Thai partnership. I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Thompson, please proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman Schatz, Ranking Member Romney, and honorable members of this committee. I appreciate very much you considering my nomination to serve as the next U.S. ambassador to Nepal. I want to thank Senator Van Hollen for his far too generous remarks. My mother and my wife have joined me today. He introduced them. With my mother here, someone maybe believed part of his remarks even. We'll see. I want to start by thanking my family, my wife Jane, and my 3 children, Marshall, Kendall, and Grace. They've served with me for over 26 years in the Foreign Service. They have endured frequent moves, emergency evacuations, and periods of separation. But they've also shared with me the privilege of serving the American people overseas, a privilege for which we are deeply grateful. I also want to thank my parents. My mother is here, for instilling in me a strong sense and interest in service and international relations. My father was the director of international programs at the National 4-H Council in Washington for 20 years, and prior to that, director for West Africa at the outset of Peace Corps. From my time as Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary in South and Central Asian Affairs Bureau, as a diplomat in Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and India, and a leader in the department's crisis management apparatus, I do feel well prepared to serve in this capacity if confirmed. It's been a privilege to serve the American people, and if confirmed, I welcome the opportunity to take on this important responsibility. If confirmed, I will embrace the opportunity to lead a top-flight group of American and local staff and strive to create an environment that emphasizes the American values of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. We're at an important juncture in our relationship with Nepal. Nepal has been referred to as a yam between 2 stones, those stones, of course, being India and China. While those countries do have important relationships with Nepal, we also share Nepal's interest in strengthening its sovereignty and partnership with the United States. If confirmed, facilitating Nepal's economic growth and strengthening the trade ties between our countries will be key priorities. The United States' relationship with Nepal has seen recent gains that cement our 75-year partnership. Mr. Chairman, you mentioned Nepal's parliament ratified the $500 million Millennium Challenge Corporation Compact in the face of a torrid PRC disinformation campaign. This project will build electricity transmission lines to connect to Nepal's clean energy, abundant hydropower with South Asia's energy grid. It will also build high-quality roads in Nepal. These projects will increase the prosperity of both of our countries. USAID has just signed a $659 million agreement with Nepal to contribute to Nepal's development over the next 5 years. This is a new chapter in the United States government's longstanding development relationship and reflects the evolution of our partnership. Post-earthquake reconstruction is winding down. The transition to federalism is well underway, and through successful programming, the United States has helped lay the foundation to support Nepal's goal of graduating to middle-income country status. If confirmed, I will also push for the rights of all Nepali citizens and residents. This includes Dalits, marginalized communities, and refugee communities, including Tibetan refugees. I will encourage the government of Nepal to implement policies that promote meaningful inclusion, economic opportunity, and humanitarian support. Nepal's progress on the commitments it made during President Biden's Summit for Democracy demonstrates how important Nepal's young democracy is to its people and the importance it places on its relationship to the United States. Nepal's support for Ukraine resolutions at the UN General Assembly and the UN Human Rights Council demonstrates its dedication to the international rules-based order and the premise of territorial integrity. Nepal is a committed bilateral partner and a committed partner on the world stage. Finally, if confirmed, I will also work to help Nepal strengthen its democratic institutions. Nepal has come a long way since its civil war only 16 years ago. Like other democracies, Nepal's politics can be contentious and messy at times, but supporting Nepal's democracy is in our interest and will remain a priority of mine if confirmed as ambassador. Mr. Chairman, I would like to close by saying that we have an important opportunity to strengthen the U.S. relationship with Nepal. I look forward to working with Congress to build this relationship. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Abraham, please proceed with your testimony.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, and distinguished members of the committee, I am honored to be here today. I am grateful to President Biden and Secretary Blinken for placing their confidence in me to serve as the U.S. representative to the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and I want to thank the members of this committee for your consideration of my nomination. I also want to thank the most important people in my life, my family. Our story is a familiar one, and it is one that is only possible in this greatest of nations. This country welcomed my parents with open arms when the country of their birth was being torn apart by the cruel ravages of a dictator. With no money and no connections, but with faith and determination, they worked all manner of jobs to put themselves through college and graduate school. They went on to become successful professionals and small business owners, as well as active members of our community of Springfield, Virginia. They raised my sister and me to love this country that had given them so much. They are the two most incredible people I've ever known, and they are the reason I am sitting here today, and I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to thank my parents. The United States is a great nation. We are also a Pacific power with deep roots and critical interests in the region. If confirmed, I look forward to working closely with Congress to realize our shared vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific, one where countries and individuals are able to make independent decisions free from coercion. Southeast Asia's economically vibrant, youthful, and growing populations are at the heart of realizing that vision, which is why the administration has made clear our commitment to ASEAN and its centrality. Our relationship is about collaboration to meet shared challenges and opportunities, including health security, energy and climate issues, and the economic prosperity of our combined 1 billion people. If confirmed, I would look to build on the recent U.S.-ASEAN Special Summit, including by continuing a whole-of-government effort to build ASEAN's own capacity to act in its interests. Our vision for the U.S.-ASEAN relationship is a positive one. It is defined by what we are for. At the same time, I am clear-eyed about the challenge that coercive activity by the People's Republic of China poses to that vision. It is in the national security interests of the United States for ASEAN to be strong, prosperous, united, and well-equipped to set the terms of its relationship with the PRC. Nowhere is that truer than when it comes to the PRC's increasing maritime assertiveness in the South China Sea. If confirmed, I will work with ASEAN to pursue our shared interests in maintaining peace and stability, respect of international law, and freedoms of navigation and overflight in the South China Sea. A critical component of advancing our interests is standing up for our values. As President Biden has said, human rights are a vital interest of this administration's foreign policy. If confirmed, I will not hesitate to raise issues of human rights, democracy, and rule of law with interlocutors across the region. I have been moved by the tragic and disturbing crisis in Burma, including the horrific and widespread violence perpetrated by the Burmese regime against the people of Burma. If confirmed, I will support efforts to change the regime's calculus so we can resolve the worsening humanitarian and political crisis and return Burma to a path towards inclusive, multi-party democracy. Above all, if the U.S.-ASEAN relationship is to continue to deliver for our peoples in the 21st century, it must be durable. The return of a Senate-confirmed ambassador to the seat in Jakarta, which has been filled on an acting basis for more than 5 years, would be a step in that direction, sending a powerful message to ASEAN and the world of American commitment to Southeast Asia and its premier institution. If I am confirmed to this post, I would take as my responsibility to ensure the long-term success of this vital relationship. To do so, I would draw on the two most important sources of stable, long-term U.S. engagement in the region: bipartisan cooperation and people-to-people ties. If confirmed, I would look to build on already strong congressional support for U.S. engagement with ASEAN. I would also support our thriving people-to-people programs, including the Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative, that strengthen our already strong bonds of friendship. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, and members of the committee, thank you again for the opportunity to appear before you today and your consideration of my nomination. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abraham. Mr. Bwangan, please proceed with your testimony.
Thank you very much. Chairman Schatz, Ranking Member Romney, and distinguished members of the committee, I am deeply honored to be here today as the President's nominee to serve as the United States Ambassador to Mongolia. I'm grateful for the confidence of President Biden and Secretary Blinken in entrusting me with this important responsibility. If confirmed, I look forward to working closely with this committee to advance U.S. priorities in Mongolia and further strengthening our bilateral partnership. I deeply appreciate the crucial role Congress plays in the foreign policy process. I want to take a moment to acknowledge my parents, Art and Evelyn, who are joining me all the way from San Diego, California, my brother Jay, his wife Joyce, my nieces Arya, Emma, and Karis, as well as my friends, family, and colleagues who are watching from around the world. They have been a source of inspiration and strength for me throughout my 23-year journey as a Foreign Service officer. If confirmed, I look forward to working alongside our Embassy Ulaanbaatar team, my American colleagues, as well as our locally engaged Mongolian staff, who have been the linchpin of our deep and abiding relationship with the Mongolian people for decades. This year marks the 35th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations with Mongolia, and 30 years since its peaceful transition to democracy. During this time, the United States has worked closely with Mongolia to strengthen its commitment to human rights and the rule of law, to promote democratic values, and to expand defense cooperation. Mongolia continually seeks increased U.S. engagement, trade, and investment. We are proud to call Mongolia a strategic partner. The U.S.-Mongolia relationship is built on a foundation of shared values and common interests. If confirmed, I will focus on efforts to bolster Mongolia's democratic and economic institutions. Our goal is to support the Mongolian people in building a strong, resilient, democratic system and a prosperous, private sector-driven economy that can play a constructive role in the international community. I would like to comment on a few specific issues. First, Mongolia is at a critical juncture in its energy transition. With abundant reserves of coal and other minerals, Mongolia is dependent on extractive industries, both to meet its own energy needs and to generate foreign exchange. At the same time, Mongolia has huge potential for clean energy, ranging from hydropower to solar and wind. If confirmed, I will strive to help Mongolia begin the transition to a clean energy future. Second, given Mongolia's ongoing economic and geostrategic challenges, U.S. development support remains critical to helping this country move forward. For example, the U.S. government's largest investment in Mongolia is the Millennium Challenge Corporation's $350 million water compact, which will redevelop Ulaanbaatar's water and wastewater system and increase the city's supply of water by 80% when completed in 2026. Separately, the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation manages a $38 million portfolio, while USA projects support small and medium-sized enterprises, empower women and youth, and improve energy governance. Third, the United States and Mongolia view military-to-military cooperation as a cornerstone of our relationship. The United States is grateful for the service of Mongolian soldiers who have served alongside U.S. and NATO coalition partners in Afghanistan. Furthermore, the U.S. military provides extensive assistance and training to improve the Mongolian Armed Forces information infrastructure, engineering capabilities, and readiness for peacekeeping operations. If confirmed, I will support efforts to continue expanding Mongolia's already impressive UN peacekeeping operations capability. Finally, turning to public diplomacy, I believe it is critical to strengthening our people-to-people exchanges with Mongolians, particularly with youth who are increasingly eager to seek opportunities to study abroad and develop closer ties with the United States and other open market societies. Over the years, our exchange programs have reaped dividends, fostering relations with Mongolians from all walks of life. Numerous senior military leaders, prominent persons in business and finance, and influential members of civil society and academia as well as 1/3 of current parliamentarians are alumni of U.S. exchange or training programs. One important key to improving our people-to-people ties is supporting English language education in Mongolia. Approximately 100 Peace Corps volunteers each year taught English across the country until COVID-19 forced volunteers to return to the United States in 2020. As ambassador, I would commit to seeing this vital program return to and even exceed prior levels as quickly as possible. Chairman Schatz, Ranking Member Romney, committee members, it will be the honor of a lifetime to represent my country as a U.S. ambassador and lead the outstanding staff of the U.S. mission to Mongolia. If confirmed, I look forward to working with Congress to continue deepening ties with our strategic partner Mongolia, while also paying tribute to the rich culture and history of the Mongolian people and helping their government meet the challenges of the 21st century. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Damore, please proceed with your testimony.
Chairman Schatz, Ranking Member Romney, distinguished members of the committee, I'm honored to be here today as the President's nominee to serve as the United States Ambassador to the Republics of Fiji, Kiribati, and Nauru, the Kingdom of Tonga, and Tuvalu. I'm grateful for the confidence shown by President Biden and Secretary Blinken in entrusting me with this important responsibility. And if confirmed, I look forward to working with Congress to advance the interests of the United States by reinvigorating our ties with our Pacific neighbors. I'd like to take a few minutes to acknowledge my family, without whose support and guidance I would not be here today. My father, Alfred Damore, established a model of public service for my 3 brothers and me throughout his career as an officer in the U.S. Army, including active duty during the war in Vietnam. My mother provided for me the best example of how a woman can and should pursue individual goals in a professional career while simultaneously caring for her family and her community. Their values and the example that they set guide me each and every day. While my brothers and their families could not be here today, I know they are here in spirit. I also want to thank the many Foreign Service, Civil Service, and local employee colleagues with whom I have had the honor to serve over the course of my 29-year career in the department. My experiences have taught me the power of our country's values-based diplomacy. If confirmed, I will draw on these lessons in my regional policy experience to advance the United States' strategic interests in the South Pacific. Because the United States is a Pacific power, we share an important history with our Pacific Island neighbors. It was in those islands that Americans braved some of the hardest fought battles of the Second World War, forging connections that are not easily forgotten. Our peoples are knit through a large Pacific Islander diaspora in the United States. If confirmed, I will work in collaboration with the 5 nations to which I would be accredited to ensure that our common future is one of prosperity, peace, and stability. President Biden has made addressing the climate crisis one of his administration's top priorities for good reason. Our Pacific neighbors are experiencing the most devastating impacts of climate change, particularly Kiribati and Tuvalu, 2 of the lowest-lying atoll nations for which this is an existential issue. As Secretary Blinken stated during his trip to Fiji this year, every defining issue of the 21st century runs through this region: the climate crisis, global health, the future of technology, whether nations will be free to chart their own path or be subject to coercion by more powerful nations. If confirmed, I will listen and work with our Pacific partners to advance solutions that will support Pacific communities and help them adapt to the impacts of climate change, address public health issues, support better communication, and preserve international rules and standards. The Pacific Islands are global players. Both Fiji and Tonga have been important contributors to international peacekeeping operations. Fijian forces are currently participating in various United Nations missions where they are responsible for providing security for mission personnel and facilities. Tonga was an early member of the coalition to liberate Iraq. Kiribati, Nauru, and Tuvalu are committed to their responsibilities as UN members, and the United States cooperates closely with them on a wide range of issues in that forum. All 5 nations boldly supported Ukraine in the United Nations. If confirmed, I look forward to continuing to build this regional and global cooperation. Success in tackling our common challenges will depend on fostering the internal strength of our Pacific Island partners that comes from strong democratic institutions, rule of law, and respect for human rights. The Pacific Islanders share our respect for democratic values, but realizing those values can be challenging in practice. If confirmed, I will strive to build civil society, democracy, and good governance through all means available to us. Embassy Suva is responsible for the United States' largest geographic consular district in the world, over 2 million square miles. It is challenged by almost yearly cyclones, floods, and tsunami warnings. If confirmed, I will make disaster preparedness and support for U.S. citizens a priority focus. My career at the State Department has taught me that our people are our most precious resource. If confirmed, it will be my privilege to lead Embassy Suva's diverse and dedicated team of American and local staff and welcome the return of Peace Corps volunteers. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you very much for your consideration and the opportunity to appear before you today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Before we get into members' questions, I have a few questions that speak to the importance that this committee places on responsiveness by all officials in the executive branch and that we expect and will be seeking from you. We would ask each of you to provide just a yes or a no answer, and we'll start with Ms. Demore and go down the line. If you are confirmed you agree to appear before this committee and make officials from your office available to the committee and designated staff when invited.
Yes.
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 Do you commit to keeping this committee fully and currently informed about the activities under your purview?
Yes.
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 Do you commit to engaging in meaningful consultation while policies are being developed, not just providing notification after the fact?
Yes.
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 Do you commit to promptly responding to requests for briefings and information requested by the committee and its designated staff?
Yes.
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 Thank you very much. I'll now turn to Ranking Member Romney for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some years ago, I was at the home of a man who would become president of Afghanistan, and people there were explaining to me their view as to why the Taliban had been so successful up until that point. And they said they have such a powerful message. And I said, what is that message? And they said, well, infidels are on Islamic land, and the infidels must be expelled. And I said, what is our message? And there was a long silence. And finally, one of the individuals said, well, our message is that before the Americans came, it used to take 4 hours to get to the nearest city outside of Kabul, and now it only takes an hour. And I thought to myself, that's not a message to die for. And fighting for freedom is a fight that typically involves potential loss of life. I'd like to ask each of you, in turn of the way you've already testified, what our message is to the people of the nation or nations that you will represent us in, what the message is as to why America, as opposed to the alternative, which I presume in each case would be China. There is a global competition between nations that are interested in freedom and democracy, and those that want to become authoritarian regimes. Why America? Why associate with us as opposed to, if you will, joining the Chinese? Again, well, please, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Senator. It confirmed, I think, the message that I've been looking forward to delivering in the fall. America standing.
Can you, yeah, your mic, sorry.
Is that on? Okay, sorry about that. Yes, I would look forward to delivering a message that tells the people of Nepal that America standing with them is about their sovereignty, about their territorial integrity, and about their ability to make decisions for themselves about their future and the prosperity of their nation. And so I think that that will stand in very sharp contrast to a lot of the messaging they hear in the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Senator, if confirmed, I would very much bring to Thailand a message about all of the values that America stands for: freedom, democracy, human rights, and so many other things. I would also listen to what the Thai want and understand where Thailand is coming from, and work to make certain that our message about the United States is both clear and offers opportunities to Thailand that the Thai people themselves are looking for. One of the things that I believe is a great advantage of the United States is the tapestry that we have, as I mentioned. This is not just government to government, business to business, NGO to NGO. It's so many other things. So I think that ensuring that we're working with all of the diverse things that America brings when it forms a relationship with another country, with another people and its citizens, the citizens of that country, that there are real opportunities here. Opportunities that the country, I believe, will have an interest in. So I would very strongly seek both to bring a message about, again, our values, listen to the Thai, understand where they're coming from, and then at the same time support and bring assistance to all of the other parts of what we as Americans bring. And I think it stands, frankly, in contrast to what's offered by the PRC, which is a much more centrally directed, much more directive situation, and I don't think that it would be nearly as attractive to the Thai. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Mr. Abraham.
Senator, thank you for the question. If confirmed, I would bring to ASEAN and the nations of ASEAN a message that is really centered in our shared commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific, one where countries and individuals are free to pursue their interests without fear of or impacts of coercion. I would bring a message of solidarity with their aspirations for sovereignty and territorial integrity. And importantly, in support of those aspirations, I would bring a message of durable, longstanding, and sustaining U.S. commitment to our relationship with both ASEAN and the nations of ASEAN.
Thank you. Mr. Bongan.
Thank you very much, Senator, for that. If I'm confirmed, I would tell the Mongolian people very simply that as a fellow democracy, we have to stand shoulder to shoulder with you. Democracies work. Your democratic system works. We have a vested interest in ensuring that your democracy is strong and resilient. We want to see you prosper and secure in your own right and make sovereign decisions without fear of coercion from your neighbors. We want to help you build strong economic open market systems that allow you to make independent, sovereign decisions about your investment, about your prosperity, about the lives you want to lead. And I would simply tell them that we're your friend and partner. We are far away from each other, and in Mongolia and the United States couldn't be farther apart, but we're a lot closer than you think in terms of our shared values and our commitment to democratic institutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Senator. Our message to our Pacific Island neighbors is simple. As we were standing shoulder to shoulder 80 years ago, the United States remains committed to helping them sustain their sovereignty, maintain their territorial integrity, achieve sustainable economic development, and help them preserve their ability to make choices in the best interests of their people. We are their neighbor. We are their partner. That's our commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ranking Member Romney. Senator Cardin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me thank all 5 of our nominees for their public service and their willingness to continue to serve during extremely challenging times, and we thank your families because we know it's a family sacrifice, so thank you for being willing to do this. I want to focus on some of the human rights issues and the influence of China in the region. So first, Mr. Godek, let me talk a little bit about Thailand. Obviously, they play a key role in regards to the crisis in Burma, and you mentioned that during your testimony. I want to bring up an issue in trafficking in persons. Their most recent report, they went backwards from being on Tier 2 to Tier 2 watch list. The report spells out the challenges they have with forced labor as well as sex trafficking. So tell me your commitment, if confirmed, as to how you will promote Thailand taking the necessary steps to end this form of modern-day slavery.
Thank you for the question, Senator. You have raised a very important issue. Thailand has had a significant problem with trafficking in persons. That was reflected in the change in its ranking, its downgrade in its ranking. This is a subject that we talk to the Thai about regularly at the highest levels. It is a subject where the United States, through a number of agencies, has provided some support and assistance to try to get some improvement. We have seen some progress, but there is a lot more that remains to be done. And I would commit, if confirmed, to doing everything possible to make progress. I would note that the Prime Minister recently did a public event, for example, where he gave recognition to a number of agencies and people who were doing some things in this area. And it's good to see high-level engagement, but there is a lot that needs to be done in this area.
Let me just, we have a lot of issues with Thailand. We recognize that. We're trying to make advancements, particularly as it relates to the humanitarian issues in Burma. Do we have your assurances that you will give objective observations as to the progress they're making on trafficking? We've seen in the past sometimes other politics enter into this. This is too fundamental of a human rights commitment, that you will give us objective accounts as to the progress or lack of progress in that country.
Absolutely, Senator. I will do that. I've done it in my previous positions, and I would commit to doing it again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Buchan, in regards to Mongolia, Mongolia is an interesting country. It's now a member of the OSCE, so we deal with them in the Helsinki Commission. They believe they have two geographical neighbors in China and Russia, but they consider their third neighbor to be the United States. So we've seen a significant strategic partnership with the United States that can clearly be improved. So I just really want to make the observation there's strong support here in the Senate to expand trade opportunities and other opportunities with Mongolia, because we see this as a real opportunity for America to have a strong strategic partner in the region.
Thank you very much for that comment, Senator. I could not agree more. We are their third neighbor. In fact, we are their preferred third neighbor. They're also seeking to expand relationships with other open market economies and democracies like Japan and South Korea. But you're exactly right. We need to be able to do more to help them build strong and resilient democratic systems, open market economies, given the challenge that their neighbors with China and Russia and the overwhelming influence and coercion that those two countries are bearing right now on Mongolia.
Mrs. DeMoore, I just really tell you how excited we are about having a confirmed ambassador for the 5 countries that you refer to. I would dare say that many Americans don't even know the names of some of these Pacific Island states. When we look at their influence in the United Nations and other entities, it can play an important role for U.S. strategic diplomacy. The same thing's true with the Caribbean island states that are very small and we generally do not pay much attention to. China is paying attention to the 5 countries that you would be representing us at. So we do look forward to you giving us some concrete recommendations as to how we can strengthen our ties in these countries. It doesn't take very much. Paying a little bit of attention to them is what they really want. But we're going to need a game plan on how we can strengthen our ties with these countries and use that as a model in other areas where the United States has really been missing in action and China has been moving very aggressively in.
Senator, thank you very much for those comments. And I think you're right. I think a lot of Americans could not find Kiribati on a map, but everybody knows about the Battle of Tarawa. We understand our historic role in that region. And I was very pleased to see the announcement yesterday of the intent of the Biden-Harris administration, subject to notification and consultation with Congress, to open 2 new embassies in Tonga, in Kiribati. We will also, if confirmed, I very much look forward to being part of the process to developing the first U.S. national strategy for the Pacific Islands. You're absolutely right. We need to show up. We need to up our game. We need to be there in person. And I would certainly hope, if confirmed, I would be able to consult with you, the members of the committee, and your staffs on how we can ensure consistent, sustained, high-level visits to the region to demonstrate in person that we are there and we are part of their future.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cardin. Just following up on that line of questioning, Mr. Moore, the announcement yesterday was a really good start. I had a constructive conversation with several Pacific Island nation ambassadors about a month ago here in the Senate. And there were two issues that were flagged for me where they thought our presence could be very useful and probably wouldn't cost that much money or be an expenditure of an unusual amount of political capital. That's obviously IUU and telehealth. We've seen such an extraordinary expansion of telehealth in the United States over the last 8 or so years, particularly during the pandemic, but even preceding that. They're very, very interested in what we can do in that space. I don't need you to be an expert right now on telehealth, but I'd love your commitment to flesh out these two issues. IUU is pretty well articulated. We know what we need to do. We just need to be present there. I think there are opportunities in terms of utilizing technology, drones in particular, to be more present in the region to stop pirate fishing. But on the telehealth side, people's eyes lit up when we started to talk about the opportunities there. I'd like you to comment on that.
Thank you very much, Senator. I agree two of the issues that we need to be dealing with are global health issues in the region and maritime security. And if confirmed, I very much look forward to working with colleagues in Indo-Pacific Command with the U.S. Coast Guard. We already have shipwrighter agreements with all 5 of these nations that help them police and sustain their own resources. Would love to see if there's more we can do in that area. And I certainly think during the COVID pandemic, we've all seen an increase of telemedicine so that people, even in remote areas, could access healthcare. So thank you very much for raising that, sir. Our health cooperation is a very important part of our cooperation in these nations, and I'd be very interested to continue that discussion if confirmed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Just 2 comments, one on IUU. There's a tendency to think that the only way to be present is to be underway. I just really want us to use technology to be present and not have to sort of multiply the number of Coast Guard vessels and Navy vessels, because at some point that becomes impractical from a financial standpoint. The other thing is, yes, everybody needs broadband, and we should try to be of assistance there, but not all telehealth requires a high-speed internet connection, and we need to explore those opportunities even as we try to help people get better broadband connection. Mr. Abraham, what opportunities do you see for the United States to engage ASEAN on environmental issues, including combating deforestation and managing water systems such as the Mekong?
Senator, thank you for the question. As you know, the nations of Southeast Asia are on the front lines of the impacts of climate change and issues surrounding sustainability. I mentioned the Young Southeast Asian Leaders Program in my opening testimony. One of the things that I know we hear from young leaders in the region is their deep-seated conviction that we need to act on issues of climate change together. That is, if confirmed, that would certainly be an area of focus in my engagement with ASEAN. It was a part of, it has been a part of this administration's engagement of ASEAN, including through the special U.S.-ASEAN summits. And I'd look to work closely with you and with partners in the region and with Congress on where further opportunities lay.
Thank you. And before moving on to Senator Van Hollen for his questions, just want to point out on the deforestation side, you know, we have the Lacey Act, and we all know that illegally deforested products are impermissible from an import standpoint in the United States. But the truth is that most of the illegal deforestation is commodity-driven, and so we're going to need to deal with that question, which is to say a lot of clear-cutting happens for the purpose of growing commodities that we then import, and that is not covered by the Lacey Act. So we need to do something on the statutory side, but there's also a fair amount of room to maneuver at ASEAN and through USTR. So thank you all for your testimony and your willingness to serve. Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good to see you all again. Congratulations again on your nominations. Ambassador Godek, let me start with you. As has been mentioned, United States and Thailand recently released the communique on our strategic alliance and partnership. That communique reads in part that it's grounded in, quote, our collective commitment to build resilient, inclusive democracies and advance human rights, end quote. At the same time, the UN Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights, Human Rights Watch, and Amnesty International have all criticized the Thailand's laws that essentially prohibit criticism of the monarchy. And in fact, February 2021, the UN Office of Human Rights panel of experts said, quote, we have repeatedly emphasized that these laws have no place in a democratic country. Their increasingly harsh application has had the effect of chilling freedom of expression and further restricting civic space and enjoyment of fundamental freedoms in Thailand, end quote. As you know, there are many people in prison right now in Thailand for simply criticizing the king and the monarchy. Can you just talk about how you will address those issues if confirmed as ambassador to Thailand?
Thank you, Senator, for the important question. The United States certainly respects the institution of the Thai monarchy. We understand the esteem with which the Thai people hold the royal family. That said, freedom of expression is critical. And I would emphasize both publicly and privately the importance of allowing people to freely express their ideas without threat of arrest. I would certainly, as I have done in my previous postings, both Kenya and Tunisia, make every effort, again, to protect the freedom of expression. I would also emphasize the importance that anyone who has been arrested be treated appropriately, with full respect for their fundamental rights, and that they receive due process. And I would make certain to put an emphasis on that as well.
Thank you. And look, I support our partnership with Thailand, but when I see statements stating that we have sort of this a collective commitment to human rights, I think it's important that we make clear our differences on those issues with Thailand.
Absolutely, Senator.
Thank you. Mr. Buangan, with respect to Mongolia, we know that Mongolia relies for about 90% of their oil imports on Russia. Any thoughts on what we can do to address that issue and reduce that reliance?
Thank you for that question, Senator. Mongolia does find itself in a very complex geopolitical environment, given their dependency on not just Russia, but also the PRC. In addition to relying on Russian oil imports and other energy imports, they're completely also dependent on coal. So I think there are two opportunities here I see. One, an environmental challenge, right, with their commitment to climate change to help them facilitate and expedite their transition to clean and renewable energy that can be done in Mongolia. But also, I think it's incumbent on the U.S. to ensure that they have strong economic systems that would allow them to find ways to further investment outside of China and the PRC. We have to accept the reality that they have close ties with Russia. I think that's something that many Mongolians want, but at the same time, we should be able to allow them to do it in a way that respects their ability to do it, that does not threaten their sovereignty, and does not coerce them or to force them to make decisions that they don't want to make. So I think with respect to energy, I think there's a lot of opportunity there where we can help them transition to that.
Well, I appreciate that. As you indicate, they're sort of in a very tough spot geographically with both Russia and the PRC. And just with respect to climate change, and I don't have time to get into it, but Mr. Thompson, as you know, Nepal is especially vulnerable to the impact of climate change given the Himalayan glaciers, and I look forward to continuing the conversation with you on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Booker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I just want to take a step back and say thank you to all of you for being here. I'm one of these folks that walks around this place and every once in a while has to stop and just take stock of the reality that we are sitting here in the capital of the greatest country on earth, all of us stepping forward to serve, make sacrifices to do so. But the work we all do is incredibly important, and it can make a difference for millions and millions of people. So I celebrate you all. I thank you all for, many of you, very long careers of service and putting your forth again to step into often difficult situations and try, amidst the chaos of humanity, to find good, to do good, and to make for a better future. So thank you all for that. Mr. Thompson, I really want to focus on you because I just recently came back from Nepal, as I think you know, and it was an extraordinary, eye-opening trip. It was sort of one of the last countries we tagged on to a longer codel, but when I got there, I found myself thanking God that I was able to visit the country because I learned so much. And this small nation set between two titans, India and China, has had this difficult balancing act for a very, very long time. And maybe I want to start with China and their extraordinary influence in the nation. You have a country that in the last year or so accounts for about 78% of all the investment in Nepal, but at the same time, as we talk with government officials, they really want to deepen their relationship with us. You know the economic agreement that we just got signed, literally with China trying to put disinformation and try to undermine our ability to deepen these economic ties. The new prime minister there seems to be really committed to an independent relationship with America, but not seem like we're just trying to exploit that relationship to counter China. They want to be understood as someone that has to stand on their own. And I'm wondering if you can give me just a brief view of how you take your mission and how to strengthen our relationship as China continues to try to expand its influence and, frankly, undermine the autonomy of the country.
Thank you, Senator. It was a great privilege to brief you and the other members of the CODEL that traveled. We really appreciate the fact that you were able to tag Nepal on and have such a good experience. I know the embassy there reported back very favorably about all the discussions that you had. You're absolutely right. This is a critical issue for Nepal as they balance their interests. I had mentioned in my opening statement, you talked about two titans. They often are referred to as a yam between two boulders. Yeah. As Prime Minister Dubba seeks to develop the economy, to find a path forward for Nepal that represents the real interests of the Nepal people, this can be a challenging neighborhood in which to do it. You're absolutely right. The Millennium Challenge Corporation Compact provides a huge game-changing opportunity for them to have greater connectivity with the electricity grid in South Asia, to build better transportation networks to allow them to expand their trade opportunities as a nation. We're also looking at other opportunities, Senator, such as through the Development Finance Corporation and our USAID mission to help develop market-oriented opportunities with entrepreneurs, with greater business and investment climate. And so if confirmed, I would look forward to really engaging very deeply in these fronts because we are at a critical juncture for this type of opportunity.
Well, I hope you see me, and I imagine a lot of the other members of that CODEL as allies in this. I think we all, I'm not overstating this, I think we all fell in love with Nepal and its people, and it was an extraordinary experience. And on that note, let me make the last point to you. I had never seen the Himalayas before, and as we flew by them, I saw people on the plane with me looking out at this incredible mountain range with tears in their eyes, getting very emotional at the majesty of the mountains. But we also were coming off of understanding that Nepal is one of the top 5 countries on the planet right now that are suffering the effects of climate change. And I was stunned at how devastating the growing warmth is doing to that country and really threatening. I mean, 20% of the water that humanity gets is coming from the Himalayas. And right now, climate change is causing havoc and threatens extraordinary destruction, not to mention deprivation. So this I see as an urgency. I knew it intellectually, but to experience it on the ground, to talk to people who are trying to think of creative ways to deal with this. And so I'm hoping that you see that as part of your mission as well, and to help us as policymakers and lawmakers try to find ways to help, especially these very vulnerable nations who are feeling, from island nations to many in the mountains, who are going to feel the devastating effects of this, which will have economic, which will not only cause economic damage, but it will cause political instability as well.
Look forward to working with the committee, with our colleagues at the department on this front. You're absolutely right. Critically important. Nepal made some very ambitious pledges at the COP26. We will continue through our assistance programs to seek ways to help them adapt and mitigate climate change. High priority for us, absolutely, if confirmed.
And again, thank you for your kindness to me before that incredible trip.
Thank you.
Senator Haggerty.
Thank you, Senator Schatz, Senator Romney, for holding this hearing. And to all of the nominees here today, I want to congratulate you. Should you be confirmed, you're going to have the unique opportunity and responsibility to represent the most exceptional nation in the world. And you're going to a region that is very critical right now, critical to our nation's security, but critical to the world's security. And ASEAN, I think, is going to continue to play a very, very critical role to advance the vision that my good friend, former Prime Minister Abe, articulated in terms of a free and open Indo-Pacific. And it was a great honor for me to work with him to deepen our alliance in that region and to expand that vision. It's a vision that I think has a tremendous amount of opportunity for us. And it's one that I think we should explore every opportunity to deepen. So, Mr. Abraham, I'd like to turn to you and talk about your view with respect to the Quad's relationship to ASEAN, and to get your perspective in terms of how we can provide key resources. I think there's a tremendous opportunity here, whether it be infrastructure resources through the Blue Dot Network, facilitating vaccines or new technologies, but I'd like to get your perspective on how we can deepen our relationship with the Quad framework in ASEAN.
Senator, thank you for the question, and thank you for your leadership in the region. If confirmed, one of the things that I would be most enthusiastic about doing is trying to find ways consistent with our views around ASEAN centrality to create greater connectivity within the region, within the various institutional pieces of the regional framework, one of them being the Quad. I think we've seen some progress to that end, and there's some interesting areas of both common interest and potential collaboration. The one I would point to, which certainly speaks to a broader priority I would bring if confirmed, surrounds our commitment to freedom of navigation and overflight and to the maritime security of the region. During the Biden-Harris administration, the Quad has announced and taken steps towards providing as a public good some data transparency tools around maritime domain awareness. That's a public good that would absolutely be impactful to our work with ASEAN and with ASEAN member nations. And I think it's illustrative of areas of common interest that I would hope to build upon. You touched on health security. I also think there's great opportunities for collaboration there, as was noted at the tail end of the U.S. ASEAN Special Summit recently.
Again, I encourage you to take every opportunity you can to find ways to not only deepen our relationships with ASEAN, but to bring that into the framework in a constructive manner with the Quad.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Boygan, I'd like to turn to you to talk about Mongolia. Mongolia has been regarded as an oasis of democracy within the authoritarian desert of Eurasia. Mongolia also has a rich history dating back to the times of Genghis Khan. We're also aware of the fact that the Chinese Communist Party makes very humane efforts to dilute the cultures of ethnic groups such as the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. The Chinese Communist Party is attempting to do the same thing with Mongolian heritage and culture, as you know, I'm certain. In 2020, the Chinese Communist Party demanded the removal of the words Genghis Khan, the word empire, and Mongol from a museum exhibition in France. The Chinese Communist Party wants to airbrush its history to minimize the important role of ethnic minorities such as the Mongols. And in addition, the Chinese Communist Party is intensifying its pressure on ethnic Mongolians that are living in China to suppress their local language, to suppress their culture. So, Mr. Boygan, in your view, what are the objectives of the Chinese Communist Party in seeking to dilute the Mongolian heritage and culture? And what are your plans to help Mongolia diversify away from China and those pressures that it's feeling?
Thank you so much for that question, Senator, and I appreciate your concern to that. I think the vast majority of Mongolians will agree and be pleased to hear your concern for that, and particularly as it relates to the PRC's attempts to dilute the culture and religious traditions of ethnic minorities in China. It's something that we've seen Mongolia, both its people and its government, have been following the developments in Inner Mongolia in particular. They're concerned about it. They're tracking it. But because of China's enormous economic leverage that they have with Mongolia, it's very difficult for them to speak out. But in vain, I think what I would say is that we at the U.S. Embassy, and this is something that I would certainly prioritize if I'm confirmed, is that we have a lot of programs with Mongolians where we celebrate their culture, where we help them preserve a lot of their rich, diverse culture. I would point to a couple of examples that we do. Our Cultural Ambassadors Fund for Cultural Preservation, for example, just awarded a grant to the National Library of Mongolia to help them preserve Tibetan ancient manuscripts and woodblock prints. So we also speak out very vocally, as you know, when we see the Chinese attempt to distort the history of the Uyghurs and Tibetans, including ethnic Mongolians in Inner Mongolia. And I think the Mongolians see that, and I think they appreciate that. So I would hope to continue that conversation with my Mongolian counterparts, if confirmed, to help them, one, celebrate their rich history, but two, figure out ways where we can figure out how we can speak openly and candidly about what's going on in the PRC.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Chairman Schatz. Thank you to all of our nominees today for your long service to our nation and your dedication to foreign service. And thank you to your families for supporting you in this service and being such great partners with you. I have a broad number of questions and very little time, so I'm going to focus, if I might, on a few areas of principal concern and interest for me. Ambassador Godek, it's wonderful to see you again across a number of trips and engagements in Kenya and Ethiopia and elsewhere. I'm so impressed with your skills and your engagement, your capability. Thailand's a new region for you, a new engagement, and one where your deep experience, I think, will be critical and relevant. One of our core challenges, both in ASEAN and in Thailand and around the world in lots of different countries and contexts, is balancing our interest in free expression, democracy, robust human rights and civil society, and security. How do you think we will balance our critical security relationship with Thailand with continuing to press for improvements in civil society and opening space for human rights advocates?
Thank you, Senator Coons, and it's terrific to see you again as well. Senator, we do have obviously a number of interests with Thailand. We have a relationship that goes back almost 2 centuries, and across that time we've done a lot together, as I said in my opening statement. I do think we can do these things simultaneously. We can continue the security partnership, which is so critical, at the same time be plain, privately certainly, but publicly also when appropriate, about things like the importance of continued progress on democracy, protection of human rights, fundamental freedoms. We can do these things, and I would certainly be deeply committed to doing that in a wide range of ways. It starts by showing up. It was great to see the Secretary in Thailand just on Sunday. It was great to see the recent U.S.-ASEAN Special Summit the President hosted. It's great to see the other visitors, Secretary of Defense out there just recently. But then it goes to, again, looking at really all of the different areas of the partnership, continuing the dialogue, and continuing to really emphasize where we can move forward together and where we have differences, making plain what those differences are, and explaining why what we have to offer, I think, in terms of values is a good way to go.
Well, and I think sending a seasoned senior ambassador like yourself to help balance that tricky and challenging balance is exactly the right choice. Mr. Abraham, Johannes, if I could, great to see you here. I'm excited about your nomination to ASEAN. The Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, how do you plan to engage ASEAN on this opening towards a trade integration that is not overturned to TPP, but is an opportunity? How would you make progress on the IPF?
Senator, thank you, and it's great to see you as well. I think first and foremost, as you do, the administration believes that deepening our economic ties with the region, Indo-Pacific writ large, and certainly within ASEAN is critical to not only our economic prosperity, but also our national security. If confirmed, I would look to work in close partnership with my colleagues in capitals around the region to build on what we found to be a very encouraging initial set of countries who signed up for to be a part of the launch of IPEF, 7 members of ASEAN being amongst them. And so as we're right now in a scoping stage of the exercise, as we continue to progress to build out IPEF, I would look to be a partner with my colleagues in capitals around the region and as well as in Washington, D.C.
If I might, Ms. Damore, I was pleased to see the initiative about new embassies in Kiribati and Tonga, the return of the Peace Corps to the region, the establishment of a new USAID office in the region. If I might, with the forbearance of the chairman, I'd just like to ask each of the 3 remaining nominees, if you might. I've particularly been interested in and supportive of the Development Finance Corporation and the Millennium Challenge Corporation. I'm the chair of the appropriating subcommittee that funds both of these. Could you just briefly explain how they will play a key role in the Pacific Islands, in our relationships in Mongolia, and in our relationships in Nepal, and how we might strengthen and deepen our partnerships in regions and countries where they have an alternative, and we're trying to show up, as it were, and provide a meaningful partnership?
Thank you for that, Senator, and thank you for your interest in the region. We do have, pardon me, we do have one country amongst the 5 to which I have been nominated that has started a conversation with the MCC, and as well as 2 countries that have signed an agreement with the Development Finance Corporation. And these are going to be critical because it will allow us to establish assistance to them that can help them with their sustainable economic development needs, which are vast, particularly in the area of infrastructure. So one of the things, if confirmed, that I would look forward to doing is exploring how we can leverage those capabilities in order to demonstrate why the United States should be the preferred partner in assisting with their economic development.
Thank you. Mr. Brangan in Mongolia.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. So there are a couple of areas where I see the DFC and MCC helping with Mongolia, particularly through their infrastructure development. As I stated in my open remarks, our largest investment right now is the $350 million Millennium Challenge Corporation's grant to help Ulaanbaatar increase its water capacity. I think there's also a lot of opportunity that both of those programs are doing with respect to trade and investment, particularly improving Mongolia's investment climate, as we're seeing with DFC. And I think given the realities that Mongolia has, particularly with rooting out corruption, with strengthening its rule of law, I think those programs are also doing a lot to help strengthening capacity building in those areas, where I think it would help, particularly as we're focusing on Mongolia's economic infrastructure and their economic development and their energy diversification, which I mentioned earlier. I think the whole of government approach here, DFC, MCC, including our public diplomacy and USA programs, will help strengthen those areas. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, your call. Do we have a moment for Nepal, or should we move on? Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Senator. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. We've talked a bit about the MCC already. It's a game changer, I believe, for Nepal. $500 million will lead to thousands of jobs, tremendous infrastructure connectivity for Nepal and India and the rest of the region, tremendous transportation infrastructure upgrades for Nepal, which can have great benefit on the trade front. DFC, a bit smaller still, it's more of a nascent stage there, but a fantastic tool, we believe, to help provide the financing that's going to be necessary on so many areas such as renewable energy, healthcare sector, and the growing technology sector there as well. So we look forward to seeing how we can better use that. And if confirmed, I would certainly be interested in doing that.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for your forbearance, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Markey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Mr. Abraham, in your testimony, you spoke about the importance of human rights and standing up for universal values. My colleagues and I, we sent a letter to President Biden before the U.S.-ASEAN summit in May, urging the president to place democracy, good governance, and human rights as key items on the summit's agenda. I was disappointed that despite the importance the president said he will place on human rights and democracy in U.S. foreign policy, these issues were marginalized during the summit. So if confirmed, what would you do to elevate the importance of human rights and concerns about democratic backsliding amongst ASEAN member countries?
Senator, thank you for the question, and I share your concerns around human rights and democratic backsliding in the region. If confirmed, first and foremost, I will not hesitate to speak with interlocutors around the region about our human rights and or governance concerns. I would also work with, in both public and private forums, I would also work with the mission staff to ensure that the U.S.-ASEAN missions tracking and monitoring capabilities as it relates to human rights concerns remain robust. And I would hope to work in close partnership with my colleagues, my bilateral colleagues in missions around the region on individual countries' concerns.
I'm deeply concerned about the lack of progress in implementing the 5-point consensus developed by ASEAN member countries, particularly with regard to engagement with all parties in Burma, including the National Unity Government. If confirmed, how would you engage with ASEAN to make progress on addressing the deteriorating human rights situation in Burma?
Senator, first and foremost, if confirmed, addressing really the horrifying and deteriorating situation in Burma would be a top priority of mine. I would push for, and I would robustly push for the implementation of the 5 points agenda, and I'd also look to work with colleagues around the government on what other tools we can bring to bear to change the regime's calculus and begin to move the country back towards a multi-party democracy. That would certainly be in a way that has built on the administration's use of the tools that Congress has granted them so far.
Okay, I want to stay with Burma, go to you, Ambassador Godek. Revenue from dirty fossil fuels continues to line the Burmese military's coffers. According to Human Rights Watch, Thailand's state-owned energy company, PTT, purchased about 80% of Burma's exported gas. I've repeatedly called for the United States to take a page out of the EU's playbook and sanction the Myanmar oil and gas enterprise. Ambassador Godek, do you agree that we need to work with Thailand to reduce its reliance on natural gas from Burma and to reduce the Thai government's continued financial support of the Burmese military?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I just want to emphasize, as I did in my opening statement, that the Burmese regime continues to carry out horrifying atrocities, and it is critically important that this stop. We have supported ASEAN in the 5-point consensus, but there's not enough progress, clearly. In fact, there is no progress at all, and it needs to happen. We have worked with Thailand. Burma and the Burmese regime's horrifying actions have been a top issue in discussions with Thailand. Certainly the Secretary, many other officials have raised this. We are seeking ways with the Thai to increase the pressure on the Burmese regime. All options are on the table. That includes further action in the oil and gas sector. And, Senator, I would commit to working very hard on this matter if confirmed. We appreciate some of the things that Thailand has done on the humanitarian side, but clearly more pressure needs to be brought to bear in new ways.
It's all about oil and gas everywhere on the planet. It's about the dough.
It's a critical issue, Senator. I agree.
These authoritarian regimes are able to extract from oil and gas. Then they do their evil deeds with that dough. So every time we see it, we know what the answer should be, And if we take strong action, then we'll probably extract the results that we're looking for. And with that, I'll just ask my final question over to Mr. Damore, Ms. Damore, and Fiji, and the impact climate change is having upon Fiji, and what actions we should be taking in order to assure them that we're on their side and we'll be there to help them.
Thank you very much for the question, Senator, and thank you for focus on that region. The question of climate change, mitigating climate change, is an existential issue for these nations. They are the most vulnerable around the world given their low-lying areas. The Biden-Harris administration has made it a top priority for addressing the region, mitigating the effects of climate change, assisting them with a clean energy transition. All of those, if confirmed, would be focus for me in terms of helping them.
Well, nothing more important, because they are they're right in the crosshairs, and we have to demonstrate that we understand their vulnerability and that we're going to take action, but we're going to show it to them specifically as well in terms of the help which we'd give them. So we thank you, and we thank all of you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Senator Kaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to the nominees. I note that 3 of you are Virginians, and Virginia is proud of each of you. Mr. Godek, in particular, I want to commend you in your current role, the work that you've done with Afghan refugee resettlement at the State Department. I don't think we give it enough attention here that in 90 days, the United States helped 126,000 people come out of Afghanistan, about 50,000 to other nations, 76,000 to the United States. Virtually all of them came into Virginia at Dulles Airport. They were then assigned to one of 8 military bases for processing, 3 of which were in Virginia. As of February, all those bases were closed, and the 76,000 in the United States were now in communities supported by families, supported by churches and other nonprofit groups all over the United States. I don't think that story has been told enough. I have suggested before that I think it would be a good idea for this committee to talk about get an update on the status of these 76,000 as well as the 50,000 who we helped evacuate to third countries. We do know there are others in Afghanistan who continue to want to come to the United States, and I think that would also be an appropriate topic to delve into, what more we can do about that. But just that number, 126,000 in 90 days, by order of comparison, in the aftermath of the Vietnam War, it took months and years to bring 120,000 Vietnamese to the United States. In the aftermath of World War II, we brought about 65,000 displaced people from Europe, primarily Jewish Europeans, to the United States. That took 5 years to bring 75,000 European Jews to the United States in the aftermath of World War II. The fact that you and your colleagues in this administration was able to help 76,000 Afghans begin a new chapter of life here and another 50,000 in other countries where they would be safer than Afghanistan is worthy of some attention, and I hope we might do that. Mr. Abraham, I want to ask you a question. It's good to see you again. I want to ask you a question about ASEAN. 4 of the 10 ASEAN nations have border disputes with China. So as somebody who does not consider myself an expert in the region, I look at that as, that's interesting. So what does that fact say about prospects for deeper and deeper U.S. engagement with the ASEAN nations?
Senator, thank you for the question. And I think my reflection on that fact is that it is a core interest, it is a national security interest of ours to build the capacity of ASEAN as an institution to allow the nations of ASEAN to speak collectively in a unified way, and importantly have the tools at their disposal to act on their self-interests. There's any number of those interests. You touch on territorial integrity and the issues of sovereignty. We are certainly committed to, and if confirmed, I would be committed to ensuring that ASEAN has the institutional capacity and that we are encouraging of their ability to collectively and collectivize some of their concerns that, in a way that would put them in the driver's seat in dealing with bigger countries in the region like the PRC.
The border disputes are largely in the South China Sea, and the U.S. is sort of committing a self-inflicted wound by not eventually ratifying the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. If the U.S. ratified that treaty, as every Secretary of Defense and every Secretary of State for the last decades has suggested we do, then we would have standing to help in pressing claims about border disputes in that area. We now don't have standing because of our refusal, which is amazing to me, our refusal to ratify that treaty. It's my hope that colleagues would eventually wake up to the need to do that. Let me ask you this. Senator Markey asked you about Burma and what you might do, obviously, to deal with the very, very difficult situation there. Secretary Blinken recently had some tough words for ASEAN, feeling that ASEAN had not really done enough. They've done some. Individual leaders have done some things. They've blocked Burmese leadership from attending ASEAN meetings on occasion. But as you look at what ASEAN could do to be more effective in Burma, talk about that a little bit.
Senator, thank you for the question. I would view our engagement with ASEAN as part of a larger whole of trying to affect change on the situation in Burma. I think ASEAN is an important part of our work with ASEAN would be an important part of that. I think building on the floor that was set with, to your point about the precedent that was set about non-political representation of Burma at key ASEAN meetings is an important floor that we need to build on and build from. I would view myself as part of a broader team, a multilateral component of a broader team that's really aimed at changing the regime's calculus. Some of that work will be done in bilateral context, and if I was confirmed, I would happily and enthusiastically work with, bilaterally or in small groupings in Jakarta with representatives from other ASEAN nations on ways in which we can continue to change the regime's calculus and continue to build an echo chamber around the cost that we've exacted on the regime.
Great. Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Kaine. If there are no more questions for the witnesses, the record will remain open until close of business Thursday, July 14th for questions for the record. We urge our nominees to complete those answers as rapidly and as thoroughly as possible so that we can try to clear for committee action your nominations. Each of you will have critical positions that we need confirmed, so we would urge you to try to complete this work as quickly as possible. If there is no further business, the committee stands adjourned.